Greetings! My name is Josh Trentadue. I'm the co-founder and current president of the Millennium Composers Initiative, and we are so excited to have the opportunity to participate in our first collaborative concert of the season with the incredible Holland Concert Jazz Orchestra. And I think the concert is less than a week away now by the time this video is posted, so get your tickets now before it's too late. The link will be in the video description or something like that. I feel incredibly grateful and fortunate to have this opportunity to collaborate with some of my colleagues in MCI, as well as with Jordan Van Hemert and his amazing, wonderful group of musicians. And I've been looking forward to this concert for a very long time now, and I'm hoping that you'll be there, and I think you're in for a real treat with this program. So today, I'm going to be answering a couple questions for you about my work that you'll hear on this program, a suite entitled For Ethereal Planes. In my time at MCI, I've been incredibly fortunate to have gotten to know fellow artist Kevin Day, another member of this initiative, and who I consider a good colleague and friend now. He is an incredibly brilliant and gifted and fantastic composer, and just such a wonderful human being. He's so kind and sincere and honest and true to himself. We both attended last year's Midwest Clinic Conference in Chicago. And one night at a local bar, we noticed that there was a group of jazz musicians playing there, providing music for the place. For some inexplicable reason, completely on a whim, Kevin decides he's going to talk to this group of musicians, people he had never met before in his life, and ask if he could join them and jam with them for a couple of tunes, essentially. What I learned that night, and what I think other people in the bar that night learned, was that not only is Kevin this fantastic composer in all regards, he is equally that as a jazz artist and pianist, and it blew me away, just how incredible of a performer he is, too. There comes a time every now and again as a composer where you might get this stroke of inspiration out of nowhere for a new piece of music based on some idea or concept that suddenly comes to you, and Kevin's jam session with those musicians that night brought that on a level that I hadn't experienced before, and so I knew I needed to write something for him that could exemplify this side of his artistry that people may or may not have been aware about. I certainly wasn't aware of it until that moment, so I talked to Kevin about the possibility of collaborating on this. I'm very thankful that he was fully on board with it, and we started to put the ideas for the piece together from there. When we discovered Jordan Van Hemert's fantastic group of players, the Holland Concert Jazz Orchestra, Kevin and I knew at that moment that we needed to write this piece for them too. For the longest time, I called For Ethereal Planes a concerto. And my reasoning for that was much of the music I have been writing up to this point has been classical music for the concert stage, or more recently, commercial work. And sure, this piece does feature Kevin as guest artist prominently throughout the entire work, and switching between 3 different keyboards as a matter of fact. Piano, synthesizer with a couple sounds to it, and Hammond organ. But the farther along I got with my compositional process with this work, the more that I realized that the big band was equally featured in this piece too, in a true collaborative process between ensemble and guest artist. And so the farther along I got with writing this work, the more that I realized that the labels and the names I had given it initially weren't actually an accurate reflection of the piece's overarching intent. And so this work is essentially just a collection of 4 tunes compiled into a suite. There's not really much musical material connecting them together, or there's not really formal structures throughout each of them intending to be cohesive or coherent with each other. Really, the connection exists between the overarching concept, which is Kevin being extensively featured in this work and collaborating with the Holland Concert Jazz Orchestra, and also what each of these 4 tunes are about. With each of these, I wanted to take a concept or an idea that was grounded in some sense of reality and completely turn it into something that was in this dreamlike sense of reality, something perhaps a little over the top, almost even verging on a sense of parody in a way for how chaotic things can get. So the first tune, Oranges and Apples, is based on my experiences writing the New York City subway lines, At the time, I lived in Brooklyn, and to get to Lower Manhattan, where most of my work was, the most direct way to get there was to take the Orange Line, and sometimes these subway trips, some of you might know this already, but they can be a little bit unpredictable or chaotic, and what have you. So this tune takes that for inspiration and goes in a completely different direction and turns it into something else entirely, as do the following 3 tunes. The second one is the slow ballad for the work, The Dance That Never Was, which essentially is for the moments in life that never happened or the opportunities missed, and so on and so forth. The work is inherently a slow ballad, and much of it is driven by the foundation that Kevin provides for the group. The third tune, Flights of Fearless Fancy, is about 95% improvisational, and what you'll hear at the concert is one interpretation by the group of players on stage. And what I really strove to create with this tune was to give them a sense of collaboration between artist and ensemble that wasn't just giving them notes on the page. And sure, there's moments where that exists, where accompaniment is reinforcing what really drives this movement. And again, that's the improvisation, this sense of creating new melodies and rhythmic ideas and everything else for the players to express in their own way. And in the end, we create some interesting interactions between artist and ensemble. Flight of Fancy, by definition, suggests something that's impossible to achieve no matter what one does to try and get there. And so the tune takes that quite literally by creating this almost out-of-control, wild, and unpredictable ride. That leads directly into the last tune, A Solitary Nightcap, which was inspired by this moment in the David Lynch Mark Frost show Twin Peaks. In one of the episodes, there is a welcoming party for a group of guests to one of the main locations, a hotel. And during this party, suddenly out of nowhere, big band music starts playing over the hotel's speakers. And one of the main characters starts dancing to it uncontrollably and sobbing uncontrollably to the confusion of everyone else in the room. It's strangely comedic on the surface when you see the moment happen, but the more we get into the larger plot of the show and the more we learn about these characters, it suddenly becomes apparent that there might be something far more sinister underneath the surface. And so this last tune takes that for inspiration, but takes it in a completely different direction too, with an introduction that sets the mood, as it will, and then turning it into this Benny Goodman-like swing number that, like the previous tune, is unpredictable and uncertain as to where it's going to go next. This piece is written for an instrumentation I hadn't worked with before, in a genre I haven't written for before, and with a stylistic approach that, although I was familiar with before, I still hadn't actually composed it before. This is my first professional composition for jazz. And so one of the challenges that really faced me with this piece in particular was to take something I was familiar with, my own aesthetic and compositional approaches, and essentially transform it and even modify it to an extent in order to adapt it into this style that was, from a composer's perspective, a little unfamiliar to me. The second big challenge that really faced me was notating the interactions between artist and ensemble that I was looking for from this work. I was using practices and ideas that I hadn't used before in previous works in order to get on the page some of my intent and what I was looking for. A lot of that lends itself to the improvisation that's featured in the piece, and so a lot of that is going to be created between Kevin and the Holland Concert Jazz Orchestra and their performance of the work. And so the challenge that really faced me was to get that intention as clear as I could for the players so that the work was still understood, but that it would still create a meaningful performance. To say that I was nervous going into this project before even writing a single note on the page is a little bit of an understatement, as again, this is for a style that I hadn't written for before. But I have to say, working with Jordan and Kevin and the Holland Concert Jazz Orchestra on this project, on bringing this piece to life, has been so rewarding for me, and the collaborative process that I've shared with them on this project has been wonderful and fantastic in every step of the way. The amount of dedication and passion and commitment and hard work that they bring into each of their rehearsals, to each of their performances, for all of their other concerts, and for all the pieces that are going to be on this concert. All of that has been so inspiring for me as an artist, and needless to say, I'm incredibly grateful to them for taking a chance on me and creating this work for them and being so open to the ideas that I wanted to express behind each of the tunes in this suite.